It was almost 8 o'clock in the evening on August 30th, 2020. The sky was dark, and the rain made the streets of Uden, a small town in the Netherlands, wet and slippery. A man named Stef Muller, who was 53 years old, was driving his black Volkswagen Golf through the streets. Stef was a big, strong man with a bald head. He had tattoos on the chests of his wife and daughter, showing how much they meant to him. But that night, something terrible was about to happen, and Stef's secret life would soon be revealed. Stef Muller wasn't just any regular man. He was famous in the world of kickboxing. He used to be a great kickboxer himself, but what made him even more special was his talent as a coach. He was so good at training others that people called him the trainer of champions. Many of his students looked up to him and said he was a gifted teacher who knew how to make them the best fighters they could be. In 2017, Stef became the trainer of a very famous kickboxer named Nieky the Natural Holzken. Nieky was known all around the world for being a champion in the welterweight division, which is a category in kickboxing based on weight. Even though Nieky had lost his title in 2016, he was determined to win it back. That's why he asked Stef to be his trainer, to help him prepare for the big fight. Stef and Nieky trained together almost every day. They would meet at the Team Holken gym in Helmond Oost, where the walls were decorated with pictures of famous boxers like Mike Tyson and Muhammad Ali. The gym was a special place where fighters trained hard to become champions. During their training sessions, Stef would push Nieky to work harder and harder. They would practice punches, kicks, and different moves until both of them were drenched in sweat. Stef always made sure that Nieky never took it easy. He believed that the only way to become a champion again was to work harder than ever before. Young boys who dreamed of becoming fighters would sit by the ropes and watch, admiring Nieky and hoping that one day they could be just like him. Even though Stef was older and not as slim as he used to be when he was a fighter, he could still move quickly and keep up with Nieky. The training was tough, but Stef knew it had to be if Nieky was going to win his title back. In June 2017, Stef, Nieky, and Nieky's father-in-law, Stef Weber, traveled to Paris, the capital city of France. They weren't alone. Over 400 fans joined them, all wearing orange shirts with Team Holzken written on them. The fans were excited and hoped to see Nieky win back his title from a fighter named Cedric the Best Doumbé. The big fight was held in a huge arena in Paris, where thousands of people had gathered to watch. The fight was also broadcast live on TV so that millions of people could see it. This was Nieky's chance to prove that he was still the best fighter in the world. As the fight began, Stef stood by Nieky's side, giving him advice and encouragement. He knew how important this fight was for Nieky and wanted to do everything he could to help him win. Stef was calm and focused, making sure that Nieky was ready for each round. The fight was tough, and both Nieky and Cedric fought with all their might. But as the rounds went on, it became clear that Nieky was falling behind in points. In the final round, Nieky managed to deliver a powerful kick that sent Cedric tumbling through the ropes. The crowd went wild, hoping that this would be the moment that Nieky would win. But the referee didn't count it as a knockout. Instead, he ruled that Cedric had just slipped. When the final scores were announced, Cedric was declared the winner by a split decision. It was a close fight, but Nieky had lost. Stef, who had been hopeful throughout the match, shook his head in disappointment. They had tried their best, but it wasn't enough. While Stef was known as a great kickboxing trainer, he had a secret life that not many people knew about. For a while, the police had been suspicious of Stef and had been watching him closely. They noticed that his house often smelled like acetone, a chemical that is sometimes used to make illegal drugs. The neighbors had also noticed this strange smell and reported it to the police. On November 7, 2017, the police decided to search Stef's house in a place called Maria Hout. What they found shocked everyone. Inside the house, they discovered blue barrels, platinum powder, and other items that are used to make synthetic drugs. They also found a rifle and 23 bullets hidden in the house. It became clear that Stef wasn't just a kickboxing trainer, he was involved in something much more dangerous. After the police found the illegal items in Stef's house, he and his wife were taken to court on February 18, 2019. They were accused of making synthetic drugs and illegally possessing weapons. Stef tried to explain away the evidence. He claimed that the rifle belonged to a friend who had passed away, and that the other items were just things he had bought at a fair. The prosecutor, however, didn't believe Stef's story. She argued that Stef had a history of getting into trouble with the law, and that he had already been convicted 3 times before for similar offenses. She demanded that Stef be sent to prison for 15 months, and that his wife do 200 hours of community service. Stef appealed the decision and he was allowed to go home. But the legal troubles weren't over for Stef. The secrets he had tried to hide were starting to come out, and they would soon catch up with him in a very bad way. On August 30th, 2020, the same night Stef was driving through Uden, he had a man in the car with him. This man was 47 years old and came from a city called Nijmegen. They drove to a street called Battenburglaan, where another man named Jay was sitting in his brown Volvo. Jay was very scared because he believed that Stef Muller had been threatening and blackmailing him for a long time. Fearing for the safety of his wife and children, Jay decided to hire a bodyguard named Tomasz P to protect himself and his family. Tomasz was from Poland and had a dark past. He had been in prison for 8 years for killing someone. When he got out of prison, he moved to the Netherlands and started working for Jay. Earlier that day, Stef and Jay had met, and Stef threatened Jay, telling him that if he didn't pay $75,000, he would do terrible things to Jay and his family. Terrified, Jay didn't know what to do. That evening, as Stef approached Jay, things got out of control. Stef allegedly attacked Jay with a claw hammer, a tool that can be very dangerous. In the heat of the moment, Tomasz pulled out a gun and fired 2 shots. When the police arrived at the scene, they found Stef lying on the ground, badly injured. He had been shot in the torso, and the injury was so severe that he couldn't survive. A few weeks later, a report confirmed that Stef had died from the gunshot wound. Jay was taken to the police station for questioning. He was very upset and started crying as he told the police what had happened. He explained that he had been living in fear of Stef for a long time and that Tomasz had shot Stef to protect him. But the police weren't sure if they could believe Jay's story, especially after they found receipts in his car for items that could be used to make drugs. This made the police think that Jay might be involved in illegal activities too. After the shooting, Tomasz ran away. But it wasn't long before the police found him hiding in a small village called Forstenbosch, not far from Uden. When the police arrested him, Tomasz admitted that he had shot Stef, but he said he didn't mean to kill him. He explained that his job was to protect Jay and his family, and when he saw Stef attacking Jay with the claw hammer, he felt like he had no choice but to use the gun. Tomasz's trial started on July 16, 2021. In the courtroom, everyone was tense as they watched videos of the shooting that had been captured by a security camera. Tomasz sat quietly, wearing a shirt that was soaked with sweat, as he listened to the prosecutor describe what had happened. The prosecutor argued that even though Stef had done bad things, he didn't deserve to die. She asked the court to sentence Tomasz to 13 years in prison for killing Stef. The prosecutor also said that Tomasz should have known that using a gun could lead to someone's death, even if he didn't mean for it to happen. 2 weeks later, the court announced its decision. Tomasz was sentenced to 11 years in prison. The judge said that while it was true that Stef had attacked Tomasz, Tomasz had still broken the law by using a gun. Because Tomasz had a history of violence and had been involved in a similar crime before, the judge decided that he needed to be punished. The news of Stef's death spread quickly, and many people were shocked. Chef Weber, who had worked with Stef at Team Holzken, was especially surprised. He hadn't spoken to Stef in years, but hearing about his death made Chef feel very sad. He told a newspaper that he had goosebumps when he found out what had happened. Stef's family and friends gathered to say goodbye to him on September 5th and 6th, 2020. They were heartbroken, especially his wife and child, who had lost someone they loved deeply. Even Nieky Holzken, the kickboxer Stef had trained, was saddened by the news. He said that it was hard to believe that Stef was gone and that he felt terrible for Stef's family. But as people mourned Stef's death, they couldn't ignore the dark side of his life that had come to light. It was hard for many to reconcile the kind, dedicated kickboxing trainer they knew with the criminal activities he had been involved in. Stef Muller's life was a mix of highs and lows. On one hand, he was a respected kickboxing trainer who helped many fighters reach their full potential. On the other hand, he was involved in dangerous and illegal activities that ultimately led to his downfall. His story is a reminder that no matter how talented or successful someone might be in one part of their life, making bad choices can have terrible consequences. Stef's life ended in violence, and the legacy he left behind is one of both triumph and tragedy. His death was a loss not just to the kickboxing world, but to his family and those who cared about him. In the end, Stef's double life caught up with him in the worst way possible. The man who once trained champions became a victim of the dangerous world he was a part of. His story is a powerful lesson about the importance of making good choices and the dangers of getting involved in crime. If you found this story interesting, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss our next true crime content. Until next time, stay safe